See the stars in the night, and they're beaming oh so bright, and the moon that guides us all when we take an evening stroll. As we lie in bed tonight, I pray that all will be alright. Soon the birds will start to sing, hope and joyfulness they bring. Love is all around us, so let's protect what He gave us. Da 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 da.
Why did you not act, see the facts when there was still time? The end our addiction, fossil fuel addiction, dependence on future existence, inventions. Activate, advocate, organize, stand up and join the resistance. There will be a reckoning. Mother Earth is threatening us. There's no other choice. Hear our children's voice. Fire, fire, Earth's on fire. Fire, fire, Earth's on fire. Truth is in the science. No one will able to fight it. Fire, fire, Earth's on fire. Fire, fire, Earth's on fire. Truth is in the science. No one will able to fight it. Storms and rising seas, drought, famines, floods could bring us to our knees. Warning, warning, sound the alarm, take action for humanity. Stop this insanity, get clarity, carbon neutrality. There will be a reckoning. Mother Earth is reckoning. There's no other choice. Hear our children's voice. Fire, fire, Earth's on fire. Fire, fire, Earth's on fire. Truth is in the science. No one will able to fight it. Fire, fire, Earth's on fire. Fire, fire, Earth's on fire. Truth is in the science.
life's too short not to really live. I got a big heart, I can let you in. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. On top of the world. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. On top of the world. People ask me what my secret is, I just smile and say, live for today. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the sun came up and I gotta say, see it in a whole new way. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. Yeah. On top of the world. Yeah. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. Yeah. On top of the world. Yeah. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. People ask me what my secret is. On top of the world. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. Ask me what my secret is. On top of the world. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. Yeah, I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world.
Hello world, wake me up to another good morning, time to go. Got that smile upon my face, cause there's excitement in the chase, this I know. Yeah, I'm going for the ride and find myself, I am alive, and I soar. Still I run towards the wind and let the challenge draw me in, cause I want more. Oh, we are all looking for adventure. 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 Oh, wake up heart and wake up mind, and see the world is yours to find. And oh, with every passing day there's more, calling you out to explore. Get up and go. There is joy found in the race, and I feel it in the place where I'm free. And I simply can't deny it, that I feel adventure calling out to me. Yeah, we are all looking for adventure. 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 We are all looking for And I'm living free, living free, living free, and I was meant to be. Living free, living free, living free, and I was meant to be. I'm living free, living free, living free, and I was meant to be free, meant to be free.
Okay, good afternoon, mga climate advocates. I am Pichi Diokino Valera, a climate reality leader and a member of the Food Security Cluster at Climate Reality Philippines. I'm your host for today's episode of Klimatotohanan entitled Making Women Count, Why Gender Matters in Building Climate Resilient Food Systems. In this special Women Month episode, we put the spotlight on women and the critical role they play in advancing sustainable food systems in the country. Thankfully, I'm joined today by a fellow climate reality leader, a women leader rin siya, and a member of the Food Security Cluster at Climate Reality Philippines. Hello, Melody. Thank you for being my co-host for today.
Hi, Peachy. It's my pleasure to co-host this episode. By the way po, again, I'm Melody from WWF Philippines. So una po sa lahat, isang makakalikasang hapon po sa lahat ng viewers na nakatutok sa episode na ito. Today, we are talking about a very important topic that's close to our hearts, and that's ensuring women empowerment while pushing for just and sustainable food systems and nutrition in the country. You know what, Peachy, here in our country, when we think of farmers, the first image that comes to mind is a middle-aged man who is transplanting seedlings in the field. Diba? Imagine, lalaki agad yung nakikita natin when we talk about farming, ano. Very little attention is given to women farmers because of the age-old traditions and stereotypes, if I may say. This is even though they play a critical role in agriculture and food systems in general.
Alam mo, Melody, tama ka dyan. I agree. There are several factors even at play here. In the Philippines, for example, women and girls usually participate in low-paying or worse, unpaid labor to fulfill less profitable harvesting jobs compared to traditionally heavy jobs performed by males in the field. In addition to this, there are very few enabling environments that put women at an advantage in agriculture in the Philippines. Kaya naman talagang importante itong pinag-uusapan natin na yung hapon na ito. And I'm so thankful, and the rest of the Climate Reality Project Philippines thankful na andito today a powerful roster of women leaders, movers, and advocates who are working on advancing women empowerment and sustainability in agriculture, food systems, and nutrition.
I couldn't agree more, Peachy. We are very lucky to have them with us today, and we will be introducing them in a while. But before that, we have some few house rules and reminders. So to our viewers on Facebook, we are giving away certificates of participation. So yan, gusto natin ng certificates, di ba? So just comment your name and where you're watching from. And don't forget to answer the feedback form, which we will be sending in the comment section after this episode. So stay with us until the end of the stream to know the details of our Klimatotohanan Challenge of the Week. So bago to Klimatotohanan Challenge. So to join this challenge, to get a chance to win special prizes from us, of course. So lastly, paalala lang din po sa lahat that you can send your questions through the Facebook comment section. So you can comment them down at any time of the show. So our production team will be taking down those questions so that we can ask them later to our speakers during the open forum. So on that note, Peachy, it's time that we introduce our guests for today's show. So who do we have first?
Okay, talagang exciting, ano? And I saw the list, but for this first one, I'm honored to be introducing Miss Irish Baguilat. She's the coordinator for UN Decade of Family Farming and Women Farmers Agenda at the Asian Farmers Association for Sustainable Rural Development, or AFA, where she collaborates and provides guidance to national farmers organizations on several initiatives. She is representing AFA in the steering committee of AgriFose 2030, or Agriculture for Food Security. Previously, she served as the Food and Nutrition Security Program Manager and Coordinator for an international non-government organization, where she led the implementation of development projects and action research programs around the following themes: agriculture-based livelihoods, food security, nutrition, and family farming. And without further ado, hello, Irish. Thank you po for joining us this afternoon. And to start off our webcast, we want you to say hi to our viewers and briefly answer our warm-up question. Di ba? May warm-up questions tayo. Why are women key to solving the climate crisis, Ms. Baguilat?
Yes, thank you to our host or moderator, and thank you to the organizers for inviting the Asian Farmers Association to this very interesting, very relevant, and timely discussion. So, first of all, I want to mention that AFA or AFA is an alliance of 22 national family farmers organization, and our project across Asia and the Pacific help us reach around 80 national farmers organization in 27 countries, again in Asia and the Pacific, with a total of 30 million small-scale women, men, and young family farmers engage in crops, livestock, fisheries, forestry, herding, and pastoralism. So to answer your question, I want to start with a statement that we say in AFA, that women are actually the nexus of agriculture, food security, nutrition, health, water, and energy. So if we talk about all these things, this sector or these themes, we actually see women in all these areas. And we know that women are key to solving the climate crisis or to enacting effective climate actions, because women have multiple roles at different levels. So first, at the household level, we know that again, women from reproductive, productive, and taking care of the family, nutrition, food security, they play that role. At the community level, they also play key roles, and including farm work and marketing of products, bringing products from their farm to their locality. And I just lastly, I wanted to mention a very important role that women play, which is linked to addressing climate change, and that is their role as custodians of agrobiodiversity, as custodians of local knowledge and wisdom, and as custodians of the skills and the practices that have sustained farming communities. So yeah, I want to highlight those two things.
Wow, thank you, Miss Irish. I love what you said about women being the nexus of agriculture, nutrition, food, water, and energy, and the presence of women in the different roles that they play in the food systems in general. Ano? So I really love that, and I also believe that, and yung nasabi mo na doon sa reproductive level, sa production, and everything else, that's really true. So maraming salamat po, Miss Irish. Later on, mas marami pa tayong matututunan sa inyo, no? So moving on to our next guest, it's Ruthfreya Teresita Avila. She is a mother, a teacher, and a farmer. So Ruth is the owner of Terrapedrito Farm, which is a farmer's field school with accreditation from the Technical Education and Skills Development Authority, or which we call TESDA, and the Commission on Higher Education to provide technical and vocational education and courses. So as an agricultural training institute learning site and TESDA farm school, Terrapedrito Farm offers trainings on agricultural crop production, organic agriculture crop production, and farm field school on the production of high-quality inbred rice and farm mechanization. As an active member of the Rare Fruit Society of the Philippines, or RFSP, and the Philippine Native Trees Enthusiasts, she advocates for planting native trees as a tool to fight against climate change. Aba, talagang puno ang ating solusyon, no, sa climate change. Totoo naman yan. And she is also a collaborator of Zoological Society of London, Hortica Filipina, and Agricultural Training Institute, as co-author of several books about Philippine native trees or beech forest trees and their propagation. Isang makakalikasang hapon po, Ms. Ruth. We're so happy to have you with us today. So, pwede po kayo mag-hi sa ating mga viewers, and just like Ms. Irish kanina, no, please briefly share your answer to this opening question. Why are women key to solving the climate crisis?
Magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. Ang ating pong mga kababaihan ay napakagaling po na mag-fight dito sa ating climate change. Kung alam po ninyo, napakaraming plantita, naging plantita nitong panahon ng pandemic. Nung tayo po ay mag-lockdown. Kami po sa Philippine Native Trees Enthusiasts at saka sa Rare Fruit Society of the Philippines ay tuwang-tuwa po doon sa nangyari kahit lockdown tayo. Naging napakalakas po ng interest ng ating mga tao, mga babae, and then kahit na yung mga gentleman farmers, naging mga plantito at plantita. Pero sa amin po dito sa Philippine Native Trees Enthusiasts, ang amin pong pinopromote ay yung ating mga Philippine Native Trees. Yun po ang ating mga Philippine Native Trees, meron po tayong mga endemic at indigenous. Yung po mga endemic natin, yun lang po yung mga nandito sa atin, dito lang natin matatagpuan. And then, siguro po meron na akong mga 10 years na nagpa-practice po ng Philippine Native Trees propagation. And then we have distributed siguro over 75 native species of Philippine Native Trees. Nakaabot po ang aming mga halaman sa University of Mindanao, sa mga eskwelahan po dito sa atin sa Luzon. Nagsusupply din po tayo ng mga raw materials po, katulad po ng Pascual Laboratories. So yun po ang aming programa. Aside from our training, kami po ay ATI extension partner na nagbibigay po ng mga training sa mga farmer at saka po sa mga senior high school. Yun lang po at marami pong salamat.
Okay, madami pong salamat, Miss Ruth. And certainly, I love yung connecting po ninyo sa Philippine Native Trees Enthusiasts sa burgeoning or talagang increase of plantitos at plantitas. And I feel that can be a start of our awakening towards, it starts with a home talaga really and on a personal level. When you plant seeds, it's also metaphorical na you're planting that seed to spread and seeds of change, kumbaga. And I hope we do realize dun sa parang pagdami rin po ng plantita at plantita that there is a need to really grow yung Philippines, grow endemic, grow indigenous, and correct me if I'm wrong, I know Philippines is one of the countries, or we're top in the highest number of flora and fauna, di ba po? Those kinds of species in the world. So yes, thank you so much for sharing what you've noticed during the pandemic, and I hope we plant more of those seeds, literally and figuratively. Okay po. So more of this later. And our next guest po is Vernie Yocogan-Diano. Vernie is an indigenous Kankanay Bontoc woman, a mother, and a human rights and community activist from the Cordillera. She serves as a consultant for the Feminist Participatory Training at the Asia Pacific Forum on Women, Law, and Development, or APWLD. She's also the board convener of BAI, National Network of Indigenous Women's Organizations in the Philippines, and country advisor for the Philippines for Urgent Action Fund Asia. Previously, she was the manager of the Kairos Women Peace and Security Project in the Philippines. She has extensive experience working with indigenous women in the Cordillera region as chairperson of Inabuyog, member of the Regional Council of the Cordillera People's Alliance, and most recently, Executive Director of the Cordillera Women's Education Action Research Center. Welcome to the show po, Ms. Vernie, and thank you for being with us today. We want to hear your thoughts like the previous ladies po. Para po sa inyo, why are women key to solving the climate crisis? Okay, I think baka po naka-mute si Ms. Vernie. Ay, naka-mute po sila, ma'am.
Sorry.
It's okay
So,
po.
Gawis ay masdam. Good afternoon to everyone. It's indeed this is really a privilege, yeah, to be joining this space para pag-usapan natin ang mahalaga na pinapapel ng kababaihan, particularly indigenous women and the rural women sa usaping climate change and on food security. And yeah, kahapon we just observed the International Women's Day, and this entire month of March we continue to observe the role, the various roles of women, particular not just on climate change, but I know that this is the focus for this forum, but in sa marami pang aspeto ng ating buhay. So yeah, I want to highlight that indigenous women and their communities, they are regarded as the least contributor to climate change. However, they are made to bear the brunt of this crisis. So this forum that we are having this afternoon will be an opportunity to highlight the role of indigenous women as frontliners in ensuring food in the mid of food crisis and climate crisis.
Okay, thank you very much, Ma'am Vernie. Sabi niyo kanina, it's a privilege na nandito po kayo. But speaking with you now, I think it is our privilege na nandito po kayo and you are lending your voice to the indigenous and rural women, not only in the Philippines but around the world. Tama po yung nasabi niyo that yesterday was International Women's Day and the whole of March is our month, no? So Women's Month, and we have the theme nga po, the Break the Bias theme, no? So napakaganda po nung sinasabi ninyo na hindi lang naman po talaga sa usaping climate change at pagiging sustainable and resilient yung role ng mga kababaihan, but it's encompassing, I would say. And it's very empowering, and I find myself very happy to be a woman that would contribute to all aspects of life dito sa atin, So maraming salamat, Miss Vernie. Later on, mag-uusap pa po tayo about your advocacies and all your projects po, sa inyong organization. So thank you po. I will be moving on to our next guest. Very happy ako to introduce our guest, but because she is also a fellow climate reality leader and kapanda. So fellow panda ko na nandito po ngayon si Miss Elizabeth Viojan. So Lace is an ecology practitioner focused on empowering local marginalized communities towards equitable environmental protection and conservation. Aside from volunteering as cluster coordinator for Climate Reality Philippines, she works as a community coordinator for sustainable food system projects for WWF Philippines. An avid bird watcher and a wildlife enthusiast, Lace also volunteers in the rescue and rehab of wild animals in Eastern Visayas. Good afternoon, Lace, and thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Nagkagulatan pa tayo dito na tayo ay magkikita today here. So please greet our viewers, and again, just like the other speakers, we want to ask you, in your opinion, why are women like us are key to solving the climate crisis?
Hello po, mayang hapon mo pangkulop and marhay na hapon sa tanan. Nandito po ako ngayon sa Ormoc City, sa Leyte. So, sa madaling salita para sa akin, bakit mahalaga na kasali sa solusyon ang kababaihan? kasi we bring a different perspective, not just in the mindset, not just in theory, but in the talents and skills that we have as a gender or a role in our gender. So, simple lang, ganun lang. Kasi dahil yung problema natin sa agriculture, sa climate, itong lahat na nagpapahirap sa buhay natin sa society, it needs a multi-sectoral approach, and it needs a holistic approach. So, kailangan kasali palagi sa usapan ang kababaihan, at kailangan hindi lang pinag-uusapan ang kababaihan, kung hindi kasali din sila sa nag-uusap-usap. So, yun po.
Okay, madaming salamat, Lace. Kaya mga kapandas are here. At saka hello dyan sa Ormoc City. And I could not agree more with you, Lace. You know, this climate crisis, it has for, years now, medyo technical and scientific, when in fact we have those solutions, diba? We have those science as our answer, but I feel what we're lacking really is the mindset and the paradigm. And I believe you when you said that we can offer a different perspective, and 100%, it should be holistic, because we should, traverse towards the past now. We see this, hindi siya in a linear, hindi siya myopic dapat eh. It should be taking into consideration different factors that contribute to the climate crisis. And that's a fresh view. Thank you so much, Lace, for sharing that with us. Okay, so we will talk to you in a bit, Lace, but before we proceed to the discussions, pag-shoutout po muna tayo sa mga viewers natin sa Facebook. So, hello everyone, good afternoon, and thank you for being with us here today. And we want to have a special shout out to the following people. Jessie Cabalida, she's watching from Cebu City. We have Chloe Janelle B. Raya from Rojas City, Capiz. Mark Bagsit from Camiling, Tarlac. Janet Versales, hello from Butuan City, Agusan del Norte. Hello rin po kay Omicol Sum, I hope I said that right, Gatan from Cotabato City. Joseph Cruz from Pasig City. We have Fame Gabisay, hello sa Tacloban. Rosel Encarnacion from Batangas. Rasha Rodil from Lucena City, Quezon Province. Christy Sofia Abiol from Sipalay City, Negros Occidental. And last but not the least, hello to you, Mea Zolina from General Santos City. So maraming salamat po ulit for tuning in today. We hope you can invite some more of your family and friends. And if you have any questions for our speakers, please do not hesitate to put them in the comment section of this live show, and then we can ask them later on.
Ayan. So again, thank you very much for tuning in. So to jumpstart our conversations this afternoon, so we will talk first to Ms. Irish about the work that they do at the Asian Farmers Association for Sustainable Rural Development, or AFA. So Ms. Irish, we see that the climate crisis is worsening. We see it, we feel it. And more oftentimes, women in agriculture who are often wearing multiple hats, different roles, they are put in greater risk. And at the same time, as we have mentioned earlier, may mahalagang parte talaga na ginagampanan ang mga kababaihan sa pagsulong ng climate smart and sustainable food systems. So in line with this, Ms. Irish, you hope you can enlighten us with how does gender relate to the goal of building the idea of climate resilient food systems? And what do you think is the role of women in sustainable agriculture? So hopefully in answering those questions, we hope that you can share your work in AFA and talk more about how you help women in that aspect. Take it away, Ms. Irish.
Yes, thank you again, Ms. Melody. So yes, in AFA, I already mentioned that we work across Asia and the Pacific. And in the Philippines in particular, AFA has 2 members. So that's Pakisama, and that's the National Federation of Family Farmers, and AgriCoop PH, which is of course focused on strengthening agricultural or farmers cooperatives. So Yeah, on your question on how we see gender within the work that we do, and how we see gender in the new term, we are using now, food systems approach. First of all, we have to acknowledge that small scale women farmers, even in the Philippines, face more barriers than male farmers. But it's more prominent, of course, in South Asia. But we still see that in the Philippines. And that, as you have mentioned, you use the word mindsets, or we can also say the cultural norms. It still favors men farmers. So I'll give you an example of what I have experienced in the past working uh, in the rural areas. So we did some training, particularly sa livestock, sa goat and pig production, and also other livestock. And then when we work closely with the local government or the barangay local officials, and then when we ask for who the farmers are, so usually they would give the name of the male farmers, because most of the land titles are still in the name of the male person or the husband, although we have already made some successes in ensuring that the title, the names of both the husband and wives are in the title. But the typical practice is that when you conduct training, it's mostly the male farmer that would be selected, would attend your training. And then later on, when we were doing the activities at the household level, we found out that the livestock are actually being taken care of by the women farmers, because most of the male farmers would spend time in the large farms, or in farms that are kilometers away from their homes, or they are working in other people's farms. So most development agency tend not to look at this like the farming as a family enterprise. So that's when we mentioned that we should look at family based training program, so that even the young farmers, the children are also capacitated or trained. So I'm just giving you one example of a typical practice where we see that the cultural norms, the practices still favors men farmer. And then going back to using the food systems approach, I think this is very important, as long as we really strengthen the gender perspective when we use these. So there is also the term value chain, in agriculture. So when it's very important for us to have gender analysis in food systems work, or in value chain work, so that we identify from production to marketing to food preparation, we identify where the men are, so that our interventions are appropriate to both men and women, and young farmers, the older farmers, or other other actors in the value chain. So we know in practice that most women are engaged in processing stage within the food systems or value chain, and also in the distribution and marketing of food. And also we know that women take cares, food preparation at home. So these key things, the roles that women and men play, it's important for us to know and understand, so that again we design appropriate interventions or technologies. I'll give you another example. Just let me know if the time, if I have a few more minutes, or
maybe this one example.
Okay.
Irish, we can
Yes.
accommodate. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll give you another example in designing, why it's important for us to identify the role of women. So when it comes to technology, usually the technologies are not women friendly. We already know that women have multiple roles, even if we link to climate change, the taking care of the water that family uses, it's the women who does that. And even other task that is affected by climate change. So most of the available technologies are still, not women friendly. So it's difficult for the women farmers to operate on big machines. So so understanding their role in food processing, understanding their role in the distribution marketing, then we can design appropriate technologies that will not add to the burden that women already has. And then in the Philippines, there is a study that says that women in rice, in particular, women does rice seedling pulling, bundling, transplanting, weeding, harvesting, threshing, food preparation. And then the study also mentioned the role of men. And also there is another study that says that not all crops or value chain would empower women, and not all capacity building programs is linked to women empowerment and gender equality. So knowing those things within our work, include in the food systems, and how are they affected by climate change, it would be really game changing for women farmers. And we know that there is a study by FAO that says if there is an additional investment towards women farmers, if there are programs towards women farmers, then the production would increase up to 30%. So imagine that contribution of women farmers, only if we target them. But again, it's important to understand their role in the food system. And of course, all these, their roles that we already know and documented, it would contribute to sustaining agriculture in the rural areas, and also developing the sector.
Okay. Wow, Miss Irish, I didn't know ha. For me, it's enlightening yung nasabi nyo na if ma-empower yung ating mga women farmers, 30% yung increase ng productivity natin in terms of agriculture. Wow! It's a big number. It's very significant. So, wow. I love this new data na binigay niyo sa amin, ano. And kanina while you were discussing, ma'am, I noted down some of the programs and frameworks and policies that are in place, ano, katulad nun nga po yung nasasama na po yung names ng mga women sa mga titulo ng lupa. Tapos meron din kayong family-based approach. Then you are also conducting gender analysis, or the role of women in all aspects in the value chain, ano. With that in mind, Miss Irish, ano naman po yung mga naging challenges natin for doing those kinds of interventions? Kasi I know, yun nga, we are facing a lot of dilemma. Meron tayong cultural, mga traditional, di ba? So what are the challenges, and how do you overcome these challenges in addressing or implementing your frameworks and policies?
Yes, I also wanted to, before answering your question, I wanted to mention that in AFA, we also focus, since we work with National Farmers Organization and cooperatives, we also focus on creating mechanisms for participation, and also for facilitating gender equality and women empowerment mechanisms. One example is within a mixed farmers organization, we facilitate the formation of women farmers committee, so that their needs, and that's one way to address some of the challenges within an organization where it's dominated by men farmers. So that's a very practical example. So through the women farmers committee, they can advocate for their challenges, which are very different or similar to the men farmers, but of course it's much different. And then through the women committee, they can participate at the local level, also outside their organization. They can also participate at the sector level, and at the policy making level. So in Pakisama, for example, Lakambini, which is the women's farmers group within Pakisama, which is a national organization. So they are already legally registered. They have been active in, pushing for policies and programs that would address the challenges specific to women. And yeah, so that's one. And also another mechanism that we have been pushing in AFA is cooperatives, mixed cooperatives. So we believe that it's through cooperatives, aside from, of course, what the programs of the government, through farmers cooperative, women are, their needs are addressed. Many of the needs of the farmers, even the men farmers, are addressed through cooperatives. So one example, the need for loans, education, calamity loans. In Agrico PH during the pandemic, they were able to help their farmers linked to a bigger market despite the logistical issues. And there's also a cooperative in Cebu, the Lamak Multipurpose Cooperative, where they really have a very specific program for women. It's through the services that they provide to women, the appropriate services that they have designed for women. They were able to economically empower women, which would translate to more equitable, gender equitable households.
Very good. Ang ganda po ng mga mga programs nyo, no? Bukod dun sa mga nabanggit ko kanina, you now have yung mga mechanisms to empower women in terms of committees and cooperatives. And I agree with you, Ms. Irish, pagdating dun sa financial literacy and access to loans through their cooperatives. Nakakatulong po talaga yan sa mga farmers natin in general, that in times of crisis, kapag natamaan nga po sila ng effects ng climate crisis, they can have the access on hand and makakatulong po sa kanila. So yeah, for the challenges, ma'am, yung question ko kanina, balikan lang natin. Ano po ba, just give me 1 or 2 challenges nga po na na-experience natin when we implement these practices.
Yes, sorry. So I think, I forgot to link that the common challenge that we see is the mechanism. So you don't see these mechanisms in, at different levels. Even in many of the cooperatives, we don't have yet mechanisms that would create the opportunity for women to really participate in the decision-making processes. So that's at the organization level. So if you look at the cooperatives, even other organizations, if you look at their board of trustees or board of directors, if you look at who are at the executive committee, you see very few women, and they do the decision making. So if there are very few women at the leadership and governance of organizations, programs, even at the community level, if you look at the barangay officials, mostly dominated by men, then how can we voice out the concerns? How can we design programs that are addressing the needs of women? So yeah, I want again to be very practical moving forward. I think we should be pushing for mechanisms to allow to give more opportunities for women to voice out at all levels, at the barangay level, organization level, sector level, committee level. And also, I don't want to talk about the cultural. I think we have emphasized that it's still there. Another thing is the education opportunities. I think we need more of the capacity building education opportunities for women farmers, so that they can really innovate technologies that are friendly to them, that they can gain the knowledge in addition to what they already have, to adapt to the challenges posed by climate change. So those are the things that I want to highlight. So the lack of mechanism, and still very few opportunities for education and capacity building program for rural women to become leaders in their own organization, barangay, village, or locality.
Okay. Yeah. I think talagang napaka-valid po nun, ano, yung lack of mechanisms, cultural, and ito nga, yung educational opportunities. And ako, personally, I always believe that really education would really push heights in terms of how women can do more sa aspeto ng food systems and in general in climate resiliency, mitigation, adaptation, ano. So yun, in the interest of time, Miss Irish, I will be seeing you and talking to you more in the open forum. And also, thank you very much for sharing that with all of us. And thank you for the work that you do in empowering our small-scale women farmers. Kasi yun nga, it's very difficult lalo na kung hindi naaayon sa iyo yung mga circumstances, 'di ba? So I salute you, Miss Irish, and the team of AFA. So all right, before I turn this over to Peachy, I just want to remind you that you can type in your questions in the comment section below, and our speakers can answer those later in our open forum. So yan, Peachy, sino bang ating next speaker for today?
Wow, yes, Melody. I mean, di pa tayo half into our show, but I just want to say thank you to Miss Irish for the work that AFA is doing, for the strides. Na-ignite rin yung pagkahuwan ako, hearing about the challenges and, the issues. And for next, more of that, we are now going to have a conversation with Ruth, a farmer and an educator. Ruth, can you tell us about your work at Terrapedrito Farm? I'm very curious to know how your farming school helps women farmers to take a more active role in making our food systems more sustainable. I think you're on mute po, Miss Ruth.
Sorry.
Okay, it's okay.
We conduct trainings in our farm school, mainly for agricultural production, organic crops production, and production of high quality inbred rice, seed certification, and farm mechanization. And hopefully by next year, we will be offering another course for landscape. Now, we are given a very how will I say that? Napakalaki po ng responsibility na ibinigay sa amin ng TESDA for the production of high quality inbred rice, seed certification, and farm mechanization. Ang course po na ito ay nag-educate sa ating mga rice farmers na siguro aware naman kayo na ang ating mga rice farmers, ang average age ay 55 to 60. Okay? And then pagka kami po ay pumupunta sa mga farm at nagpapakilala ng project ng ating TESDA o ng ating Department of Agriculture, napakarami po ng mga challenges na aming so many challenges in this field that we met. Ang amin pong pakay sa kanila ay mag-educate at mag-skills building. Pero ang nangyayari, lahat po ng problema na nauuko sa gobyerno, ibinabato nila sa amin. Ang tawag dito, ang role po namin ay magbigay ng skills building on palay check system, transformational leadership para po kahit konti baka mabago yung negative attitude tungkol doon sa farming. At saka po yung financial literacy para naman po ma-elevate yung kanilang financial capacity. Dahil season after season, kahit sila naka-jackpot ng harvest na mahal, ay poor pa rin sila. Hindi sila umaangat. Lagi silang laging may utang. So I am very passionate about this na kailangan ay sila ay matuto na mag-impok. Hindi yung anong tawag dito, one day millionaire. And then yung kanilang napakahirap ng baguhin kasi nito, pero at least meron tayong mga batang mga farmer na pwede nating matrain na kailangan hindi pagkakahapon ay mag-iinom ng lambanog o anong tawag dito, pupunta sa inuman o pupunta sa sugalan. So ito po yung kalimitan namin na mimit na problema, pero ang ginagawa nila binubunton nila yung kanilang pagkamahirap sa ating gobyerno na hindi sila nabibigyan ng magandang intervention. Pero sa totoo lang po, napakarami po ng intervention na ginagawa ng ating gobyerno. Kaya lang pag minsan, yung mga intervention na yon ay hindi rin naaakop sa kanila. Kaya kaya ang ating mga farmer ay merong nasasabi. Sa akin pong mga training program, ito po ay kalimitan po ay sa mga farmer. And then meron din po kaming partnership with the DepEd. Doon po sa Joint Delivery Voucher Program na kami po ay nag-o-offer ng agriculture. At nakakatuwa po na nang tawag dito, ito pong taon na ito, nakapag-motivate po kami ng isang batch sa school ng Gumaka. Napakalayo po nito, over 100 kilometers from Candelaria, Quezon. Nakapag-motivate po kami ng mga bata doon. They were 20 who were engaged in agricultural crop production. At kahit putol-putol po yung aming klase, nakapag-produce sila ng harvest na naibenta nila sa community, na nag-motivate sa kanila na magtanim pa ng dagdagan pa yung kanilang tanim. And then i-extend pa yung paggamit nila ng lote. So ang ginawa po namin, dahil nalaman namin na successful yung kanilang enterprise doon, yung aming JDBP program, pinadalhan pa po namin sila ng mga seeds para at least hanggang June makapag-produce sila ng mga short term na mga vegetables, katulad po ng lettuce, ng pechay, ng kangkong, at saka yung iba pang mga gulay. So, dito po sa aming kurso, napansin po namin, mas marami po ang babae na nag-join ng program. At sila yung mga passionate, sila yung maraming tanong, at sila yung mga hindi nag-a-absent. Hindi katulad noong aming mga male na konti-konti lang, parang patak ng ulan ang tawag dito. Ang dating doon sa aming mga TESDA courses. Marami lang kaming mga lalaki pagka yung sa rice farming. Yun po ang napansin namin. And then doon sa aming JDBP program sa mga senior high school, mas marami din po ang nag-join na mga babae kaysa sa mga lalaki natin na mga senior high school. Yun lang po.
Wow, okay. So, maraming salamat po, Ms. Ruth, for sharing those, what you guys do sa Terrapedrito Farm. And interesting na narinig ko po na parang ginawa rin pala kayong soundboard ng mga farmers natin. And I like that you share about the interventions not suitable for farmers, not specifically for women or male farmers, mostly about farmers, and it gave us a peek into what's also happening with the system. I particularly liked what you mentioned po, Miss Ruth, about motivation. Diba sabi nga po nila, yung farmers daw natin ay a dying breed. Kasi we used to be, top one sa Asia. Tayo pa yung knowledge share when it comes to farming. And now, they all, especially the families, would want to flock to the urban areas or sa Manila to take on another role or job or career. And it was refreshing to hear you say motivate, na you're doing it to transformational leadership. Importante rin po tong financial literacy. Kailangan rin po talaga nilang matutunan yan, especially yung usual system nila with the middlemen, etc. And I particularly loved rin po to hear that a lot of women and young girls are joining in the courses and the program. So for me, it's refreshing rin po. And since we talked about po yung partnership niyo with TESTA, with DepEd, how about the role of private enterprises sa inyo po? What do you think are their roles of the institutions, the private institutions, in empowering women to build sustainable and resilient food systems? Sa inyong experience po and pananaw, ano po masasabi niyo when it comes to this?
Wala po kaming nakaka-partner na private sector sa aming training. Ang totoo po nito, ang farm school as a partner, kami po yung namumuhunan para po ma-implement namin yung mga projects. Pero wala po kaming nakaka-partner na private sector para po ma-implement ito. Ang isa ko po lamang na-discover nung ako po ay nagbibigay ng agro-entrepreneurship training ay ang Jollibee po. Naggawa sila ng Jollibee Foundation, I think. They created a video presentation regarding how to help the farmers, women and men in general. I mean farmers in general. So yun lang po ang na-discover ko. Nagbibigay sila ng mga PowerPoint presentation, pumupunta din sila sa mga farm at nag-educate din po ng farmer. Pero hindi po namin sila nakaka-partner pa. Although ang Vice President po ng Jollibee Corporation ay aking batchmate nung high school.
Wow.
Na, ewan ko, magkikita yata kami ng March 20. Pero sumulat na ako sa kanya, hindi naman siya, kukornerin ko siya sa
Opo, pakita niyo tong video natin sa Facebook Live.
Kukornerin ko siya sa March 20 pagka nagkita kami. Nagkita kami last year, pero he's been very shy. Very shy po itong VP ng Jollibee. So at saka maraming bisita, so hindi kami nag-usap. Pero this time I will really try to corner him. Dahil meron akong binigay sa kanya na proposal para po matulungan at least yung mga employees po na doon kami magsisimula. Yung employees ng Jollibee, dahil mostly naman nanggaling yung mga yan sa farm. Mga farmer ang magulang niyan, mga tiyuhin. Why not start from them na capability building or skills building? So I really hope. Pero ngayon po, wala po kaming kapartner na private sector.
Opo, sure. So lastly lang po, since you said that, para sa inyo po, what support do you think women farmers need from both the government at saka the private business sector to own their role as agents of climate action? Kung sa private business ba, is it relegated only to educating or info dissemination? What do you think about their role? What do you think their role should be?
Parang sa akin po parang napaka-broad ng tawag dito ng question. Why not we make it simple na itong mga kababaihan ito ay mag-form ng association o group, dahil yun po ang lagi kong ini-encourage sila after the training. They form a group or an association and nakita naman nila yung value chain. Choose from there kung ano yung kanilang mai-contribute sa community. Katulad nitong mga senior high school dito sa Gumaka. Anong tawag dito? Nalaman nila na pwede silang mag-supply. Walang supplier ng gulay doon sa kanilang community. So nalaman nila yon na pwede silang mag-supply ng iba't ibang gulay sa kanilang community. Dito sa atin na nasa lowland, anong tawag dito? Marami silang pwedeng isipin. Katulad po ng pag-process halimbawa ng bunot. Dito sa amin sa Candelaria may mga niyog na tawag dito, kinakawit. Pag minsan sinisilaban lang o kalimitan sinisilaban o pinababayaan na lang mabulok ang mga niyog. Pwede yung i-chop-chop at ipak at pwedeng ibenta. Ang kailangan, sa nakikita ko po, ang nangyayari, parang ang kailangan natin silang laging, nung tawag dito, tulungan at iangat yung kanilang attitude towards farming. Parang pag minsan po mahina ang loob ng mga kababaihan dahil itong mga kalalakihan, ang dami nilang, anong tawag dito? Para bang binablock nila pag minsan yung mga, anong tawag dito? Yung mga naiisip na enterprise nitong mga kababaihan. Dahil nga, siguro dahil meron tayong cultural mindset na mas malakas ang lalaki, mas nagtawag dito, mas astig kaysa dito sa mga babae. Pero kung tutuusin po, I have seen so many women farmer na maano sila, mas kumikita sila, mas nakakaipon sila. Para ako yata ay nag-exceed na ako dun sa aking oras.
Sige po, no problem. Pero super enlightening po ng share niyo sa amin, Miss Ruth. Kasi usually, di ba, we can hear or we would usually hear na, okay, the government should play this role and the private business sector should provide this and that. But it's enlightening that your perspective is, from the ground up, parang grassroots movement type, and pushing these young women or the women farmers to be the catalyst. Kasi it's important, like mentioned a while ago, it's a holistic perspective where we change culture. And when we change that culture, even yung mga males na nakapalibot rin po dito sa women farmers, magbabago rin po yun kasi we're social beings to begin with, and ayaw rin natin na parang pag hindi tayo part of the group think sometimes, and I think this is the kind of group think we need to push. Diba? So thank you for sharing that po, Ms. Ruth, and I hope you get to reach more women farmers in the year ahead. We will talk to you again po in our open forum. At this point, we have a few reminders from the Climate Reality Project Philippines and its partners.
Thanks, Peachy. So the Climate Reality Project is inviting you to the 4th installment of our Klimatotohanan workshop series entitled Keeping It Real, How to Combat Fake News and Disinformation, happening this Monday, March 14. This virtual workshop will tackle disinformation, fact-checking methodologies and platforms, and the importance of discernment in the 2022 elections. So in addition to that, this workshop will also discuss climate change misinformation and tips on how readers can catch climate change lies. So tune in to our Facebook page to know how you can register.
Oops, nakamute pala ako. Sorry. Okay, thank you, Melody. And we are looking forward to this Klimatotohanan workshop. Aside from that, gusto rin po namin i-share sa inyo ang mga initiatives at event ng ilan sa ating mga advocacy partners for the Klimatotohanan webcast. Para sa ating mga viewers mula dyan sa gitnang Luzon, narito ang ilang paalala mula sa CLTV 36 na isa sa ating mga official media partners.
Take full advantage of the power of TV and digital media when you advertise with CLTV. Through CLTV, you can now have your very own TV commercial for your business at a reasonable cost. And not only is your business authenticated by a reliable and trusted TV station, you can also reach our captive audience through CLTV's various digital media platforms at the same time. Contact us to avail of these exciting advertising opportunities.
Okay, ayan. So, that is CLTV 36. So, pumunta naman tayo dun sa mga initiatives ng ating mga partners sa mga colleges and universities. Ano? So, inaanyayahan naman tayo ng Earth UST para sa kanilang Environmental Summit for Youth Action. So, this is a 2-day event organized by Earth UST, the premier environmental organization of the University of Santo Tomas, wherein delegates and environmentalists from different universities and colleges will gather to become an avenue for the youth in the promotion of environmental awareness. So abangan po natin ang announcement mula sa Earth UST sa kanilang Facebook page. So next naman, dahil sa pagdiriwang ng unang taon ng Philippine Association of Environmental Science Students at pakikipagtulungan kasama ang The Hearth Movement, inaayayahan namin kayong umattend sa PANTAS, Experts Talk on Environmental Research in the Philippines Setup. Ito ay gaganapin kada huling Sabado ng buwan mula ika-4 hanggang ika-5 ng hapon, so 4 to 5 p.m. via Zoom and FB Live. So makinig at magtanong sa mga imbitadong panauhin tagapagsalita kung paano nga ba maging isang environmental scientist dito sa Pilipinas. Ito po ay bukas sa high school, undergraduate at graduate students na may planong kumuha or kasalukuyang kumukuha ng kursong agham pangkapaligiran or other related degrees tulad ng environmental management, environmental engineering, environmental planning at iba pa. Maaaring mag-register lamang sa link na ilalagay sa comment section upang makuha ang meeting link. So muli po, sama-sama nating tuklasin ang malawak na posibilidad para sa mga future Pinoy environmental scientists.
Wow, ang gaganda ng mga events na to, Melody. Kahit hindi ako estudyante, parang gusto ko rin siyang puntahan.
Correct. Oo.
Yeah, diba?
Baka naman, not part pwede rin, Peachy.
Oo, pwede. Parang ano lang tayo doon. Sumisip. Yeah, but aside from that, di ba, meron tayong celebration of International Women's Week 2022, the Orduha Women's Desk of the Ateneo Human Rights, the Ateneo Human Rights Center invites you to the Tindig ng Pilipina. Ganda rin tong event na to, a webinar on women's rights and the 2022 elections. So it's happening this Saturday, March 12, 2022, 5 to 7 p.m. rin po. Okay, and I like you guys to use this hashtag too. Let us hashtag break the bias by taking our rightful space in politics and governance, expressing our women's electoral agenda and using our vote to forward women's rights and human rights for all. So ang Pilipina talaga noon at ngayon tumitindig para sa sarili at sa kapwa Pilipina. To register, visit bit.ly/tindig ng Pilipina. Okay. So we are also happy to share that the Climate Reality Project Philippines is supporting the Youth Climate Agenda 2022, spearheaded by one of our Klimatotohanan partners, Youth Advocates for Climate Action Philippines, or in short, YACAP. Okay, malapit na ang May 22 national elections, Melody. Okay, so as the climate crisis continues to worsen, we need leaders talaga who will take on the task of pushing for a sustainable people and planet-centered Philippines for current and future generation of Filipinos. Kumbaga, walang patumpik, no dilly-dallying. And the Youth Climate Agenda 2022 serves as a challenge to our candidates to put just and green leadership at the heart of their campaigns. So if you guys want to learn more about this, please visit and share Yakap's Facebook page at facebook.com Yakap Philippines. Isang pilang po.
Okay. Yun, aba, yung mga youth talaga very much involved dito, ano? Ito naman, yung akin naman, ay mai-involve dito yung mga artist, ano? So we are calling all climate advocates, writers, and poets to join When Is Now, a global creative collaboration for urgent climate action, organized by the AGAM Agenda, Climate Vulnerable Forum, and the Institute for Climate and Sustainable Cities. When Is Now is an open, evolving call for creative expression and collaboration to demand for urgent climate action. All you need is a seed of an idea, a string of words, and your willingness to share your experience, as well as acknowledge and respond to other experiences of the climate crisis. So to learn more about this initiative and how you can submit poems and seeds of creative climate action in many, many forms, visit whenisnow.org. So altogether, Agam Agenda will be interweaving lines of poetry into a web that stretches across the planet, asking when and demanding now.
Okay, very beautiful. And speaking of words, expressions, and poetry, we would also like to invite you all to order your copy of Harvest Moon. Ganda nito, melody. It's poems and stories from the edge of the climate crisis. So, di ba, poetic? So it's an anthology of loves and lives of stories that thrive at the borders and edge of the climate crisis. The book features over 50 award-winning and emerging writers, photographers, and artists across Africa, Asia, the Pacific, and Latin America. So in keeping with the vision of a beautiful yet accessible book for diverse readers, the Agam Agenda and Institute for Climate and Sustainable Cities are offering this limited Philippine edition at a significantly marked down price, okay? So order yours now at the link flashed on your screen. Add to cart nyo na yan, mga friends.
Oo, ang ganda ng title, Harvest Moon. So I can't wait to get a copy of that book and read it and just feel the intensity of the emotions na nandun sa book na yun, So but before that, before I read the book and somehow get the book, I would like to announce to our viewers that we have another pakulo here in Klimatotohanan, So we have this Klimatotohanan question of the day. So it's a new contest and ang kailangan nyo lang gawin is sagutin lamang ang katanungan na ito. Why should we empower women to build climate resilient food systems? Yan.
Ganda,
Ulitin
diba?
ko ha. Ulitin ko lang, Peach, para makuha nila. Why should we empower women to build climate resilient food systems?
Okay, all right. Just send your answers. Probably we could also join, di ba, Melody? Via the comment section, lagay nyo lang po of this Facebook Live. And we will pick 2 winners who will also win special prizes. So yeah, announce po namin ang winners in the next episode together with the winners of our challenge for this week, which we will announce naman po later on.
Yeah, so comment na. We are looking forward to reading your answers. And you can send as much entries as you want, okay? Sige, comment lang and answer. But for now, let's continue our conversations with our guests naman. So meron pa tayong dalawa, Peach? So in this segment, we will zero in on the lived experiences of indigenous women when it comes to climate change and how indigenous knowledge systems and practices contribute to climate-smart agriculture. We are very fortunate and privileged to have Vernie with us to share her lessons that can be drawn from indigenous women in terms of supporting climate resilient food systems. So, Ms. Vernie, based on your work as an indigenous leader, why do you think indigenous women are important agents of change for climate change or the climate crisis that we are experiencing? And how do indigenous farmer women support climate change adaptation efforts in their local communities? Take it away, Ms. Vernie.
Okay.
Vernie?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Melody, for posing this question. So, what I'm going to share, like whatever knowledge or wisdom that I'm going to share,
Mhm.
this at this moment is like learnings. I owe them actually. These are like learnings, wisdom that I've gathered from Indigenous women leaders, Indigenous women and their communities. Yeah. So, on the prevailing discourse on climate change is an acknowledgement that there is a climate crisis. This crisis impacts groups of peoples like indigenous peoples and rural farmers who have contributed least to that to cri- to the crisis. Bearing the brunt of a crisis that you did not create manifests a clear injustice. Di ba? Napaka-unfair. That is really an injustice kasi hindi mo nga kinreate and yet you are made to suffer. So let me underscore that the values, knowledge, and practices of indigenous peoples, which are mostly kept by indigenous women, enable us to contribute to the sustainability of the planet, the food systems, and the natural resources which contribute in maintaining life on Earth. These values, knowledge, and practices was the way of life of our ancestors and the generations that followed so as to avoid crises like food and resource crisis and climate change. Let me share some of the values. In my community, we have this saying, adita ko bukudan digawis, or let us not monopolize the good. The simple translation of this today to our daily life is we should only produce what we can consume and gather only what we need. Production and gathering is based on need. The values of sharing, caring, or in my language, lawa ya inayan, coexistence, mutual support, symbiotic living, or reciprocation, that is practiced again in my community as ubo or binadang, made indigenous peoples thrive over time. These values made indigenous peoples to exist in tough environments and situations of aggression. These values also emanate from our deep relationship with the land. An essential character of our being indigenous is the rule that land is life. Cordillera martyr Macleing Dulag had spelled this out during the Chicodam struggle, and so by countless indigenous leaders and chiefs around the world, including indigenous women chiefs or leaders. This tenet gives significant recognition to the integration and interrelatedness of living and non-living matter on Earth, the relationship of human beings with other animals, with nature, and everything. Each has a role to play in maintaining life. The tenet of land is life promotes life and forbids the harm and abuse of life. Land is life is a principal indigenous tenet, and the values it engenders confronts a big contradiction to the culture begotten by the colonial and the current dominant global economy, which is production and gathering based on greed and profit. Laws and policies have affected how indigenous values, knowledge, and practices are lived out. The economy of greed and profit that is made systematic by prevailing laws and policies have eroded the values of sharing and caring, collectivity, solidarity, and sustainability among indigenous peoples. The emergence and dominance of the culture of greed and profit is now making indigenous peoples, particularly indigenous women, who are deeply affected by this trend, to respond to the crisis not of our making. Whether it is climate crisis or hunger due to a fast eroding sustainable food systems, and the rapid aggression of natural resources, I see two responses of indigenous women and the communities to climate change. One is resistance. There, there is resistance on laws, policies, and practices which are designed to reinforce, perpetrate, and perpetuate greed and the monopoly of resources, production, and profits. For indigenous peoples, over-extraction of resources ruins the harmony of human beings with nature and the various ecosystems, disturb the harmony between the living and non-living things. Over-extraction cause global warming and an imbalance on the climate. Thus, we begin to experience erratic weather and climatic pattern. We experience extreme weather conditions like prolonged rains or dry season, erratic cold and hot season, and an increasing temperature. These changes may bring about floods or droughts, which destroy not only our food systems but the entire life systems, affect agricultural cycles, lowers production, and create a breeding ground of pests. Another form of resistance is to assert the practice of natural diversified production and management of natural resources and regulated gathering of natural resources guided by indigenous values of caring and sharing, collectivity, solidarity, and sustainability. The other response of indigenous women and their communities to climate change is to adapt to cash economy. Instead of diversified natural production, they are forced to shift, or we are forced to shift to cash and monocropping, which is government's food security program. The government's food security program that was shaped by the Green Revolution and intensified by the era of neoliberal globalization were instrumental in destroying natural and sustainable food production systems as farmers and indigenous peoples gradually shifted to engineered and genetically modified seeds and input-intensive production. The natural and sustainable agricultural and food production systems, which is used to be in the hands of indigenous peoples and farmers, were stolen and eventually monopolized by huge agrochemical corporations and plantations. This modified the culture of sharing and caring, collective production, and produce and gather according to need, to a culture that breeds greed, individualism, and a myopic perspective that I've heard a while ago. I think it was you, Melody, who mentioned it, if not Peachy. Yeah. And going forward on how indigenous women farmers support or how indigenous women farmers support climate change adaptation efforts in their local communities. Let me underscore that adaptation happens when your system is less effective or viable than another system. Why are indigenous women and their communities made to adapt when it should be the actors or systems causing climate change that should adapt to the more viable systems of indigenous peoples? Hindi ba?
Opo.
Climate adaptation measures will only be an option to communities on the following conditions. One is when they allow their viable and sustainable production systems to disintegrate or malusaw or masira due to enforcement of laws, policies, and practices that favor over-extraction and monopoly of resources by business corporations. Second is when they decide not to resist and simply go with the current or trend. To assert viable systems of production and resource management, to resist laws, policies, and practices that kill viable and sustainable food production systems, to build resilience or the capacity to adapt will entail the strength of indigenous socio-political and economic systems and the collective strength that will and the will to defend what is a viable system. Not having a strong socio-political and economic systems will mean indigenous peoples will only flow with the current. If the current is market economy, that is the current now, right? Which we have no control of, then we will face chronic or cyclical bankruptcy, being tied and dependent on the dictates of the market. If the current is boundless resource extraction, then we will have to give up our local resources for the profits of a corporation. Indigenous women are always in the front line in defending viable and sustainable production and resource management systems. Indigenous women are also in the front line in building climate adaptive measures such as planting climate adaptive seeds or plant varieties, combining natural and reduced chemical applications system of production. Indigenous women are unafraid to experiment and explore on viable practices and remedies.
Wow, grabe, Miss Vernie. Actually, I was taking down notes hanggang sa hindi na ako nag-notes kasi ninanamnam ko lahat ng sinasabi ninyo, no? But what I got from the sharing that you did was madami. Una yung injustice. Because in the world of environmental planning, meron kaming tinatawag na polluter pays the price. Diba? Pero yung sa sinasabi nyo nga na wala ka namang kasalanan, hindi ka naman nag-contribute sa pagkasira ng ating ng mundo, ng kalikasan, ikaw pa yung naapektuhan. That's really something na we have to not really more hindi lang re-evaluate kailangan ma-actionan natin to, no? Kasi yun nga for our indigenous peoples, these are their resources. Ito talaga yung immediate na pinagkukuhanan po nila, no? So talagang napakahirap po sa kanila na makabawi kapag ganito po yung nangyayari at patuloy na nangyayari. And second, what I got also from you, Miss Vernie, is that kahit nandyan naman yung mga resources, if we don't have the values, we don't have those values of sharing, caring, and we proliferate greed and profit nga, walang mangyayari dun sa gusto nating mangyari kahit sobrang madami pa tayong resources, abundance of resources. So values here play a key role. Yun yung talagang na napulot ko dito na oo nga no, in a world na we are consumed by consumerism and always wanting to have everything or always wanting more, isa sa mga dapat nating matutunan sa mga IPs natin or indigenous peoples would be the value of contentment, I would say. And using the sustainability of resources wisely. Yun talaga yung mga nakuha ko, ang dami, and yung kanilang response, yung resistance, and yung they resort to cash ins. That's something that we would really need to look at dahil sila nga po yung most vulnerable, most affected, and at risk. Okay? So yon, Miss Vernie, ang dami ko talaga nakuha, no? Hindi ko maano, but in the interest of time, I would just like to have 2 questions. Miss Vernie, paano po na-address, undoubtedly, there are some cultures and traditions po sa mga IPs na medyo patriarchal pa rin, ano? So, paano po natin yon, paano po natin na-overcome yung ganong traditions or norms na meron sila to leverage naman po yung ating mga indigenous women?
Okay, that is really a very good question at saka very relevant, especially that we are celebrating International or Women's Month. Ano? Well, I think that is the work, like in the organizations that I've worked with, like two indigenous women's organizations in the Cordillera, in Nabuyog, and the Cordillera Women's Education Action Research Center. That was the focus actually of the programs. So there is no other way but to keep changing the mindsets, and the only way that we can actually do that is through awareness raising, capacity building, and then like an exchange. Like we create spaces, and it's not actually like, even if there is some, because the level of patriarchy is also like different, like in communities, in
Yes.
ethno-linguistic groups. So it depends in the way
Opo.
that they have, like,
Opo.
resisted resisted
Opo.
the colonial values or the Western values. So it
Mhm.
depends. So like the farther you are, the less exposed you are. But then the closer you are in the town centers or in the urban areas, the more exposed you are, because it is in these places where you find that, these are like these are like the centers where the patriarchal influence through education and through religion, even through laws and everything, and
Mhm.
other institutions, dito
Mhm.
kasi nakukuha yung mga ganyan na influence. So yeah, so awareness raising, capacity building, and then creating spaces and platforms wherein there is a meeting.
Mhm.
Hindi lang kasi nalilimita actually sa mga babae, kababaihan, pero dapat
Mhm.
na-reach out ang mga lalaki. Kasi pareho,
Yes.
they are actually victims of, having the patriarchal mindsets had been brought about by the same education that
Mhm.
both men and women received. Yeah?
Mhm.
Kaya, di syempre dahil nga dominant yung patriarchal culture, di mas lalo na parang mas sila. At samantala yung
Mhm.
babae naman nagsisik ng space or ng parang ano to, yung pag-intindi ng kanilang
Mhm.
kalagayan para mas
Mhm.
maano. And the only way to do that is to create spaces kung saan
Mhm.
pareho nire-respeto. Mga babae, re-respetuhin natin, ang mga lalaki ay biktima ng isang macho, patriarchal na edukasyon
Mhm.
o kultura, yung
Mhm.
ganyan. And so
Mhm.
when we are able to understand that, mas nagiging mutual din, di ba? Yung parang imbes
Mhm.
na we treat each other as, instead na antagonistic yung ating approach, ay mas paano, parang mindset, educational, baguhin ang pananaw, baguhin
Mhm.
yung pananaw, pagtingin. So
Yes.
that is the way. So it's not easy. Yung
Yes. I
yung
would say,
isang
yun na nga po. I
it's
was
not
about to
easy,
say that.
oo. Kasi habang andyan yung yung parang yung kultura at saka yung parang the systems dominant in the communities, habang ganun
Mhm.
na medyo discriminatory, oppressive para sa mga kababaihan, syempre mahirap talaga baguhin yung ganyang mindset. So it's very
Mhm.
important na even for the young people, youth organizations, indigenous youth organizations are developing platforms or programs to kind of like,
Mhm.
allow the meeting of genders, as well
Mhm.
as allow the meeting of the old and the young ones to have exchanges. At mas dyan pa naiintindihan kung bakit may naiiba o kaya discriminatory or oppressive na pagtingin sa kababaihan. Yeah.
Mhm. Opo, yan. Tama po kayo. Actually, yun po yung sasabihin ko, no? Because these traditions, they are like existing for hundreds of years, thousands of years. For you to change it in a snap of a finger would it will be a dream come true, pero hindi po talaga ganun kadali, ano. And ako po talaga, I agree with you. I see Women's Month and International Women's Day as something na hindi lang po kababaihan yung ating dapat tignan dito, kundi yung mga kalalakihan, and respecting the differences and what they can offer. So it's not about only equality, but it's also equity. Ano po, dito sa ating usapin na, no? So last question ko na po, Miss Vernie. Kamusta naman po yung sa tingin ninyong proliferation ng mga IKSPs, yung mga indigenous knowledge systems and practices dito sa Philippines? Would you say na they are taking traction, or sa tingin niyo po if there's a long way to go pa po para ma-recognize natin yung importance ng IKSP?
Kung in terms of like, kung yung recognition is coming from government or yung
Mhm.
duty bearers, I think malayo. malayo. Kaya nga yan din yung the level yung parang the level of assertion ng indigenous peoples and particularly women na itong mga gobyerno and even international agencies are having a difficult time looking for solutions, for just solutions to the climate crisis and to the food crisis, when in fact indigenous peoples have long volunteered actually their systems, their viable indigenous systems, in averting food at saka climate crisis. So yung systems actually, indigenous systems or indigenous knowledge and practices ng indigenous peoples being their way of life or being our way of life is not something to kind of like para pangsanggamo when climate crisis is here or pangsanggamo when food crisis is here. Indigenous peoples, I think long-term talaga, yung pananaw ng indigenous peoples, na parang nakikinita nila na if we do not do this, I mean, if we do not treat land is life, na which is a principal indigenous tenet, kung hindi natin panghahawakan yan, di talagang magkakaroon ng crisis. We will meet climate crisis, we will meet food crisis, and iba-iba pang crisis. So ganun. So I think it is yung ganyan na yung parang it's a long way, and we have been doing this. Kung yung advocacy at saka yung advocacy ng indigenous peoples hindi nagkulang. Kaya nga meron na tayong UN DRIP or the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, which only shows na at even parang that advocacy went as far as the international level just so may recognition. So ngayon that we have the UN DRIP, kahit hindi niya sinasalamin yung yung parang all those aspirations that we want, at least yung minimum ay andyan. But even the minimum, governments have difficulty to kind of like acknowledge. So, yan yung mahaba. So, while, sinasabi ko nga, while andyan na nga yung solusyon sa kamay ng indigenous people, sa buhay ng indigenous peoples, and particularly practiced by yung pinupush talaga ng indigenous women, ay hindi pa rin pinapakinggan ng governments and other development institutions.
Opo. Okay. So actually, medyo yung mabigat po yung tanong ko, no? But yeah, it's a reality that we have a long way to go, but there are baby steps, if I may say baby steps, or steps that we took. We took naman for advocating for the rights of indigenous people and indigenous women in particular. So thank you po, Miss Vernie. Napaka-inspiring po ng ginagawa nyo. It's not easy, I tell you. Being an implementer on the ground also, na hindi pa po ako nag-handle ng mga IPs, I can imagine the challenges. But look at you, you are still here and you are headstrong and you're a woman leader. Yun po yung maganda dun, ano? So what we can get from this topic for our viewers is that truly indigenous people's ways of life have been and will always probably be the best models for climate action. So sila po talaga yung matatawag nating stewards of nature, ano? So Ms. Vernie, we look forward to hearing from you again later dun sa open forum. So I hope you can stay with us.
Okay. Madaming salamat po, Ms. Vernie. As in, was really, parang gusto kong huminga na malalim habang nagsasalita kayo. Thank you for putting a spotlight on land is life, symbiotic relationship, and interrelatedness. Those are the themes that really should be learned and made everyone be aware of. So up next is our conversation naman po with our fellow climate reality leader, Lace. So Lace, you work as a community coordinator for sustainable food systems at WWF Philippines. So I hope you can share with us, how are you guys there in WWF Philippines how are you helping local communities increase their accessibility to nutritious food, as well as capacitate those who are working in the food sector, specifically women, on sustainable food systems?
Yes, thank you, Peachy. So, quickly i-run through ko lang kung ano yung ginagawa ng WWF Philippines. So, we run on 4 pillars. So, that is energy transition, that is sustainable production, habitats, and sustainable consumption. So, kami, Miss Melody, na sa sustainable production kami at sa consumption. So, these 4 pillars are all anchored sa goals natin na biodiversity and climate. So, all kasi nakikita natin na talagang itong mga problema na to, hindi lang isang approach dapat ang gagawin mo. So, dapat ito sama-sama. So, sa pag-approach natin sa local communities natin, so, we sa low-income urban communities and then sa rural communities. So, these things are research and are seen on the ground kung ano talaga yung babagay na solutions. Kasi no solution is one size fits all. So lahat ng ito ay binabagay kung sino-sino mga tao ang nangangailangan, sino-sino mga tao ang may kakayanan, at paano natin sila i-meet halfway sa mga kailangan nila. So ang ginagawa namin sa WWF, lalo na sa sustainable production, ay yung focusing on addressing the food security. Lalo na nitong kasagsagan talaga ng pandemic, nakita natin kung gaano kahirap pala maka-access ng fresh, nutritious at mura na pagkain, lalo na yung gulay. So what we did is next slide please. So what we did is we sort of innovated a mix match of innovations like hydroponics, urban agriculture, container gardening. So one of the things we did is ganito, creating these so-called food sheds. So as you can see, para siyang greenhouse na open, pero nasa ibabaw yung mga veggies mo, tapos nasa ilalim, I don't know kung nakaklaro dyan, may mga manok yan sa ilalim. So yung ganyan na approach, it addresses yung mga usual na problema natin sa farmers na kulang yung lupa or walang available na malapad or malaking lupa. Yung accessibility din sa kailangan ng mga mobility accommodations, lalo na yung elderly natin, yung youth, tsaka syempre yung women, kasi this kind of farming is more accessible kasi less tilling. I mean, actually no more tilling kasi it's containerized, and then it's also very low cost. So yung mga gaya ng sinabi ni Miss Irish kanina na yung traditional farming natin is more of yung parang tilted towards yung foremen na heavy equipment, yung mga ganun. And then we also help them with financing, and then with accessing grants from the government. So example sa DOLE or sa DA. And gagaya ng sinabi ni Miss Ruth din kanina, no, na marami tayong mga government interventions, pero yung nagkukulang kasi yung accessibility. So paano makakakuha yung farmers natin, lalo na yung women farmers na mostly overlooked sa mga ganitong intervention. So paano nila ma-access yung mga ganun? So sa work ko, my approach is hindi lang sa technical know-how ng kagaya ng hydroponics, yung mga ganyan. I also try to focus on the leadership, lalo na sa women. Kasi sa nakikita natin, lalo na sa mga farmer organizations, most of them are led by men. So overlook yung potential ng leadership ng women. So what we do is to just try to open up the leadership post, and then by trial and error and then coaching and then mentoring them, we can see na may potential din talaga yung women. Hindi lang tayo titingin sa pool ng men na dyan. So yun, dyan natin nakikita na medyo na-overlook talaga yung women sa farming, kasi halimbawa sa listahan ng government, sa LGU, puro mga pangalan ng mga lalaki yung nandun kasi the usual approach of just using the head of the name of the head of the household, which is usually the husband. So isa yun sa mga small pero malaki na yung epekto ng mga bagay. So ayun. So yun yung ginagawa namin sa WWF sa ngayon when it comes to food production.
Okay, thank you, Lace, na shinare niyo po sa amin yung 4 pillars nyo. Apakaganda actually. I see the multi-sectoral approach there and the holistic highlight that you mentioned a while ago. And I love the idea that it's customized. Tama nga naman na parang, diba, there's no one solution to this crisis. That if there is, diba, could have solved this, eons or decades ago. And I like the link between kay Miss Vernie when she said land is life. Sa'yo naman parang I'm hearing the soil is our soul. And we know that there's a scarcity of soil now. Some have said the institutions, we have 60 years to go before our soil becomes depleted. And it's good na this is also being addressed in your programs and all. And financing and accessing grants. Ang ganda po ng niya. Kasi it's a long way from what we usually do before when it comes to the topic or theme na agriculture, di ba? Parang hindi pa naman, it's more of talagang magtanim talaga and there's no other agenda to focus on, such as financial literacy and accessing grants. And you mentioned leadership a while ago, Ms. Lace. For you, what scenarios are you seeing when talagang women once and for all takes the helm in our agricultural system, and why is it important to involve and empower them towards leadership?
So thank you for that speech. So let me paint a quick picture kung ano yung nangyayari on the ground, lalo na sa farmers organizations natin. So yeah, most of the time nga led by men, and then there comes a time na hindi na nag-work yung organization for so many reasons. So trinay namin na what if si secretary or kasi yung usual na nangyayari lalo sa officers, sa mga officers ng mga farmers organization, yung mga babae na pupunta sa secretarial ng mga position. So we tried that, coaching them, mentoring them, and then letting the group itself, the whole assembly to speak their mind kung ano talaga sa kanila yung effective na leadership. So nakita na si secretary pala mas ma-effective na leader because she not only knows the trail of paperwork but also empathizes na napipil ng mga co-farmers niya kasi actually statistic wise yung sa mga farmers group, most of the members are actually women. So far sa mga organizations namin na hinahandle, most are women. Usually 70 to 80% of the memberships are women. So kapag meron kang leadership na kung hindi man women mismo, or it could be na men din or lalaki din na marunong makinig sa mga co-farmers niya, maski lalaki ba or babae, yun yung mas nagiging effective na klase ng leadership. When they take into account, they listen, they really talagang ina-address nila yung inclusivity dapat na meron. Hindi lang yung parang metrics na okay, kailangan natin maka-harvest ng ganito ganyan. Not minding about the kung nandun pa ba yung dedication ng mga tao kasi nakikita ba yung mga needs nila or hindi.
Super agree with that, Lace. I mean, diba, the women, they say, are known to be really empathetic, and I feel that might be one of the ingredients lacking and sometimes in our systems. Kaya sabi nga nila na if you put more women into the leadership role, not only does it become inclusive, kasi naranasan na nila to be in that side where it's really rife with discrimination and being, marginalized. And it's important that we get to see both sides of the story. And like yung conversations kanina, it's not only a women issue. I mean, it's also because of the mindset brought about by patriarchal generations and embedded. So that will really take both linking of arms ng men and women to unshackle, and really years of unlearning ang gagawin talaga natin. And it's good na it's growing. Kumbaga, we're planting those seeds. And yes, heart of the gender gap pay issue, nakita ko rin yan sa sinasabi mo, that's happening worldwide, and it's because of that culture na when men are given more importance, and it's not equal pay, equal opportunity, equal everything. So thank you for highlighting that place. Ang ganda na parang that thread that went into the thread of what's happening worldwide with our women, or the sisterhood, kumbaga. So very inspired. I would like to thank you, and I would say I'm very inspired with your work at WWF. We hope this episode could also serve as a springboard of future collaborations natin, among our organizations in advancing the sustainable food systems, right, Melody?
Of course, Peach, I couldn't agree more. Ang dami nating natutunan, ano. Actually, yung ulo ko parang punong-puno ngayon, pero I'm very happy. My mind and my heart are both full in a good way, So we've heard really wonderful insights from everyone, and we really need more of those. Not only today, not only this month, but every day, because women, we celebrate you every day, di ba? So kaya naman dadako na rin tayo dun sa open forum natin, pero syempre hindi natin kailangang kalimutan yung mga nagstay sa atin ngayon. So magsha-shoutout muna tayo. Shout out to Jessica Bolanos of Oriental Mindoro. Hi sa mga taga Oriental Mindoro. Charity Anos of Zamboanga City. Wow. Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao. Then Cherilyn Lim, Pasig City, kapitbahay ko lang dito. Linel Expectacion, Camarines Norte. Ayan, Cam North pala. Relani Lasquite ng Negros Occidental. Hindi naman din nagpahuli si Gracelyn Juanon from Negros Oriental naman. At si Jessa Singid ng Negros Oriental din. Si Yel Gardosen ng Rizal. Hello. Lalaine Marcos of Ormoc City. And Alexa Martina Cruz from Las Piñas. Then Ilona Pay Ardisa, University of Cebu, Banilad. Maayo. Theodore J. Molina from Ilocos Sur. And Naimbag. Nagabi sa'yo, Theodore. And Rodan Mabunga of Marinduque. Thank you so much for staying with us. And now we are going to read the questions from our Facebook comment section. Peach? Our speakers, Peachy and I will be reading some of the questions of our viewers. If it's not directly to a specific speaker, feel free to step up, and the question is open for everyone and anyone to answer. So let's start with a question from Adrian Emmanuel Gladstone. What does it take to be an empowered woman in agriculture, especially nowadays that we are facing the challenge, which is climate change? So ano daw po ang kailangan ng isang empowered woman sa isang na nasa agriculture sector? Yes po. Sino ang gusto sumagot? Ako ba mag-volunteero?
Yes. Sige, siguro ako muna mismo. So, what it takes to be a women leader in agriculture, it takes some guts, some confidence, some honesty kung ano yung alam mo, kung ano yung hindi mo alam. And then it takes open mindset na paano matuto and how to apply these things on the ground. Kasi para yung sa personal example ko, I'm not an agriculture graduate. I don't have any formal background in agriculture, pero through opportunities, kapag may free trainings na malapit lang, pwede ko ma-attendan for free, so I take it. So yun po.
Oo, yan tayo, no? Basta kung mayroong opportunity, grab ng grab. And I think, Lace, what I got from your answer is that transparency. you lay out what you can offer, and also be vulnerable din sa mga hindi mo rin kayang gawin, kasi doon nga tayo natututo and doon din tayo nag-grow as a woman and as an empowered woman, ano. So meron pa po bang gustong sumagot ng question na to?
Yeah, I wanted
Wala.
to add.
Yes,
Yeah,
sure.
okay.
Yes.
Yeah. What it takes to be an
Sige po, Miss
empowered
Vernie.
woman sa agriculture or sa rural production. I think yung kung sa akin talaga yung pagkilala kung ano ang viable at saka ano yung sustainable. And this is like based on the practice that we have seen for a long time. Yung parang hindi pa tayo na pinanganak pero alam natin na it had been like practiced by generations, at alam naman natin na in practicing such like the indigenous knowledge and practices sa food production, sa resource management, alam naman natin na yun pala ang bumuhay sa generations of people at saka sa pagpapahaba ng buhay ng earth, ng planet. Yeah, so I think that is the acknowledgement of that, pagkatapos yung pagsasabuhay rin. Kasi we do not only acknowledge, we should also like practice it. So I think it's the challenge, I would say, kasi like for instance, yung mahalaga din na lessons, I would also like to share yung mahahalagang lessons drawn from indigenous women in terms of supporting climate resilient food systems, which I think is like so much related to yung question naman is yung having the power to assert indigenous viable and sustainable food production systems as response for climate change. Of course, this requires public or government subsidy. So kailangan na may lakas o may determination yung kababaihan, yung rural women, yung indigenous women to assert at saka hingin i-demand yung ganito na support coming from the public or the government. Tapos the power to be unafraid to resist laws, policies, and practices that promote pollutive and profit-driven food production, unregulated resource extraction at saka land grabs, at saka the power and resilience to experiment and be creative on what can be developed or combined when indigenous production systems are defeated or eroded by an emerging food or production system. Like for instance, may kinikilala ng indigenous women na ang hirap talaga banggahin yung dominant market production or market-based production or economy. Kaya hirap na diyan sila actually nahihirapan. Diyan kami nahihirapan na parang na mag-adjust at parang kumbaga sa pilitan ka na mag-iisip ng adaptive measures, whereas yung sistema mo naman ay ang dapat sana na ina-adapt.
Okay. So, ang mga nakuha ko dito, Miss Vernie, you walk the talk and have the courage. Actually, courage is one of the core values of WWF. Kaya natutuwa ako dun sa sinabi nyo na talaga, you have to stand up and speak up. Miss Irish, sorry, my apologies, you were cut kanina, no? So, you can provide your inputs and stay na rin because the next question is addressed to you po.
Okay, just very quick lang. I think most of the two speakers already mentioned key things. So a few things lang important is the vision. Any woman can be a leader as long as they have that that vision beyond themselves. So I think that's based on experience, what I have seen among the women leaders that we have. Their vision is not just for themselves, but even for their communities and their organization. And then willingness, as mentioned already, willingness to go through the process. It's very difficult when we talk about challenges at the system level. And of course, capacity, which can be addressed through education and leadership building.
Okay. Peach, would you like to deliver the next question to Miss Irish?
Okay. Yes, Miss Irish. For you po to. It's from Janine Isabel Peralta. She said that she asked that Miss Irish, what are the titles of the studies you mentioned, or where can we read these studies, such as the one about technologies not being women friendly?
Okay, so yeah, I think the studies I have mentioned is about the study on the value chain, that it's in Visayas, that not all value chains that are being developed are empowering to women. Not all of them are addressing gender inequities or inequality. So there are certain value chains, and what the study have shown, the value chains that give more economic value. So for example, coconut, medyo mababa kasi yung return, no? Yung profit. But there are certain value chains that are not very labor intensive for women, but they earn much more. So there's a study on that, and then yeah, on the women friendly technologies, there's no specific study that I have encountered yet, but what I'm trying to say is maybe there are innovations that have already been developed by the government, but it's not yet widespread. I'll give you an example. We once worked on cassava because it's drought tolerant, no? So we worked in this area na walang masyadong tubig, so cassava can grow well even in dry areas, and you just have to select the particular variety. And then but the problem is cassava price is very low. So you need to address the value addition of cassava para mas mataas yung income ng farmers. And then processing, as I mentioned, it's women's women's activity. But then what the government is giving away is a large processing machine for cassava that they cannot even operate. So yeah, that's just an example.
Okay, wow. Thank you for sharing those, Ms. Irish, both studies saka experiences po. Okay, so for the next question, take it away, Melody.
Yes, I will address it specifically to Miss Ruth kasi meron nga siyang farm school, ano. So yung question is, how will young women be encouraged to engage in agriculture when they seem not to give interest in it? So ano po yung mga ginagawa niyo, Miss Ruth, na panghikayat or kumbaga, how will we entice women to be engaged in agriculture? Ruth, andyan po ba si Miss Ruth?
Opo naman,
Yes.
nandito.
Yay!
Yan.
Apa.
Ano yung start video? Yung tawag dito, yung pag-entice namin sa mga kababaihan ay sa pamamagitan po ng mga occupation na pwede nilang ma-practice pagkatapos halimbawa ng kanilang mga qualification na ginawa at naipasa na national certificate. Katulad po sa organic agriculture, ang mga kababaihan ay pwedeng mag-produce po ng mga extracts or mag-prepare ng concoctions para po sa mga kanilang kapwa farmer. Dahil kung ang farmer na rin ang magpo-produce ng pagkain, siya pa rin ang magpo-produce ng fertilizer, parang napakahirap na trabaho na yun. So, if we can divide yung ng value chain po ng organic agriculture, pwede yung pasukan ng mga babae. Pwede rin silang magtayo ng nursery at mag-distribute ng mga nursery materials, katulad po ng mga seedlings. Yan naman ay hindi masyadong mabigat na trabaho. Pwede rin silang mag-produce ng mga seeds, hindi lang seedlings. Pwede silang mag-produce ng mga science. So marami pong avenues, maraming opportunities na pwedeng i-practice ng mga kababaihan. Kailangan lang natin na buksan ang kanilang kaisipan, ma-develop yung right attitude para sila makapag-practice. At saka po dito sa aming mga training, yung pong aming joint delivery program with DepEd na ang aming pong target ay mga senior high school. Hindi lang naman ang agriculture ay pagtatanim. So we also motivate them to join us sa training. Ang kinukuha ko pong mga trainer ng aming mga JDBP implementation ay yung mga graduates na rin namin. Nung tawag dito, kami po ay nakapag-employo ng 4 na JDBP graduates nung nag-graduates namin noong 2019. At sa kabutihang palad naman, napakaganda po ng resulta ng aming ginagawa. And then dito sa aming mga training sa TESDA, ang kinukuha din namin yung mga graduate namin. And then mas passionate kasi ang mga kababaihan na magturo. So yun po ang aming nagugustuhan doon sa aming mga lady trainers. At yun ang gusto po namin ma-develop. Yun lang po.
Opo, so talagang marami tayong marami po talagang opportunities. Hindi lang po talaga natin siya na ma-market ng maayos and hindi po natin na ipaiintindi or somehow hindi po na ipapakita or na ibibigay itong mga knowledge na ito sa ating mga kababaihan, But definitely with Terrapedrito parang na-achieve niyo na rin siya, Thank you po, Miss Ruth. Ang dami pong discussion, pero Peachy, di ba, masyado na tayong mag-overtime kapag tinuloy po natin.
I know, right? Unfortunately to you, the viewers, that is all the time we have for open forum, but really inspiring, right? Really inspiring, nakakaantig ng damdamin, kahit hindi ka nga babae, right? And thank you, our genuine gratitude to you, our speakers, for providing us your insights on this very timely and relevant topic. So we will ask our guests for their final messages in a while, but at this point, we will like to announce the winners of our Klimatotohanan Challenge last episode. So pa-drum roll tayo. Okay, ang winners po natin ay, Gino Dayanan and Alessandra Altavano. Okay, congratulations, guys. Climate Reality Philippines will coordinate with you for your prizes. And for this week, ang challenge po natin sa inyong mga viewers, same as the last episode. Okay? Listen up closely. This is what you need to do. Write an open letter to your local public officials and ask them to provide support for women farmers. Okay. Last, I'll just repeat it. Okay, what you need to do, write an open letter to your local public officials and ask them to provide support for our women farmers. So remember to make your posts public and tag our official accounts. So after you post it, message the Climate Reality Project Philippines Facebook and Instagram account with a link to your post as a final step para rin po ma-validate namin ang inyong entry. So we will be picking 3 winners who will receive special prizes from us. Meron kami mga grow kits, o diba? Pwede tayo sumali dyan. And other sustainable products na ipamimigay. Winners will be announced during the next Klimatotohanan episode, so watch out, right? Kaya naman after po nitong episode, mag-post na tayo ng mga entries and just follow Climate Reality Project Philippines Facebook and Instagram to be updated rin po. Okay?
Grabe, ang Klimatotohanan. Madaming mga pakulo. Talaga naman. Very good yan. And now, to wrap up our discussions this evening, may we request our guests to answer our Klimatotohanan question of the day. And during our discussions, nasagot nyo na to probably. Pero ito yung challenge ko sa inyo. In one sentence. In one sentence lang po sa inyong 4. Why should we empower women to build climate-resilient food systems? Let's start with Irish. One sentence lang.
Okay. As a response, I think women farmers are enablers. Women farmers are actors, solution providers, and they must be recognized, having a role in building climate resilient food systems.
Wow, gusto ko naman yung sagot ni Miss Irish, solution providers. Pero hindi tayo yung problem creators, right, Miss Irish? Okay, next. Thank you po, Miss Irish. Miss Ruth, You now have the floor. One sentence.
I will share. I will answer it with a motto,
Okay.
which
Sige
is
po.
my favorite. I'm not an expert, so I learn to do. I do to learn. I earn to live, and I live to serve.
Oh.
Opo.
Wow, grabe naman yung tagos naman sa puso namin yun, Miss Ruth. Talagang selflessness for the greater good. Yun talaga ang magiging solusyon sa mga problema natin. Ano? Thank you, Miss Ruth. How about you po? Yan, si Ma'am Vernie ang aking kabalik-taktakan kanina, no? Ang aking kachikahan. Miss Vernie, so ano po ang inyong one sentence to answer the question?
Yeah, I just opened my mic.
Yes.
So, um, life is born by women, and we have life because of the life we draw from Mother Earth.
Okay, wow. Naku naman, talaga namang parang Miss Universe question to, Miss Bernie, the essence of being a woman, the power of being a woman. Ano po? And for Liz, my kapanda. So, syempre, medyo iniba ko yung question sa'yo, no? So, Liz, how will you urge naman the youth to use their creativity for climate action?
So, by yung pa-encourage natin yung youth so activate sa climate action is to really try to see themselves as people with the potential to do real change. Hindi lang sa isipin na bata pa ako so the future ko na gagawin yun. No. At this age, at this time, your action is relevant and needed.
Wow, naman talaga naman. Grabe, mga babae, iba tayo, no? So we learned a lot from all of you and to express our appreciation sa lahat ng mga natutunan po natin today and for giving us your time. I know we spent a little bit more time, more than 2 hours, ano? So we will be gifting each of you with a copy of Harvest Moon, Poems and Stories from the Edge of the Climate Crisis. So as mentioned earlier, kanina ni Peachy, this anthology features over 50 award-winning and emerging writers, photographers, and artists across the world. And who knows, you may find your next inspiration from the stories and visual pieces coming from this book. And I will definitely look forward to reading this book talaga. So I hope you will enjoy it. And again, thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you po.
Yes po, maraming salamat sa inyo mga ng aming inspirational guest na yon. And also thank you to our viewers for sticking with us, and we hope that you learned a lot from our episode today. Please share it. Sharing is caring. Muli, happy National Women's Month at belated happy International Women's Day. While we celebrate us women this month, let us be reminded that the fight for equal opportunities and rights for women is far from over.
Oo nga, Peachy. We still have a long way to go, but indeed, we need to do more and do better, especially for women in the marginalized and most vulnerable sectors of the society that we have discussed today, you know? And we need to do this simultaneously with advancing our climate action and sustainability. We know that this is not an easy task to do. We have a long road ahead of us. That's why we need to work together and find more spaces like these to exchange knowledge and share best practices. So to our viewers, we hope to see you again in our upcoming episodes. So in the meantime, please do not forget to join our community on all our social media platforms. So follow the Climate Reality Project PH on Instagram at Climate Reality PH, small letters, and Twitter at Climate Real PH. And you can also visit our the socials of our guest organizations, yung AFA, Terrapedrito, kung meron, of course, WWF Philippines, and yung kay Miss Vernie, kung meron man sila, organizations and partners and their handles flashed on the screen. Ayan. Kung wala mang social media, mga website, puntahan nyo. Okay? And support. Ayan. So reminder for our certificates of participation, kindly answer the feedback form that will be in the comment section. So yan. Please answer para magkaroon ng certificate. Okay? So
Okay.
I'll give it to you, Peach.
Yes, of course. And ending this webcast. Thank you, everyone. Super thanks. This has been Klimatotohanan, a webcast organized and led by climate reality leaders to tackle the urgent climate issues of today and tomorrow. Why Klimatotohanan? Because we need real talk and real action on the climate crisis. Maraming salamat po at magandang gabi po sa ating lahat.
Thank you.